guys? I just got out of watching the new horror movie Obsession, and I'm not gonna lie, I feel like this might be my favorite horror movie of the year. And honestly, it might end up being, I feel like, my favorite movie, or at least one of my favorite movies of the entire year, period. Like, this movie I feel like was just that good to me. And genuinely, I haven't really walked out of an original horror movie this excited, I feel like, in a long time. And I think what makes this really even crazier is the marketing for this movie has been absolutely fantastic. Because one of my, I feel like, biggest complaints with modern horror trailers is they just show way too much, right? They basically spoil like half the movie in them. They show all the best scares and like the major character kills or deaths, and by the time you sit down in the theater, you kind of feel like you've already seen, I feel like, most of the film. But with Obsession, they've kind of done the complete opposite here. The trailers mostly just show specific creepy moments and scenes from the movie without giving any like major story beats. I understand the premise, but you still go in not really knowing exactly where things are heading, and I just love that. The premise itself is just super original, which feels very rare right now because of like the horror reboots that have been coming out. Everything is just either just remakes or sequels, legacy sequels, or just reboots of older franchises that just aren't the same anymore. But this actually feels fresh. We follow this guy who clearly has feelings for one of his close friends, someone he's worked with for a while and has known for a while now, but you can kind of tell pretty quickly early on in the film he sees their relationship very differently than kind of she does. She views him more as like a good close friend, and he clearly is way more emotionally invested with her. And then he ends up kind of finding this weird Make-A-Wish item in this like creepy magic store, buys it as a joke, and then quickly realizes like this thing is just very real. And that's where the movie kind of starts spiraling after that point. Now, I will say this is definitely a more like slow burn horror movie, but it's still one of the best slow burns I kind of seen in a while, because every, couple of minutes, something weird is happening on screen. Something just unsettling happens, or something just feels very off. And so even when it's not really full-blown chaos, you're constantly just feeling like just unsettled and uncomfortable. And they do so much with like what feels like a relatively low budget, like the shadow work, the camera work, the lighting, the way the characters even move, and their body language and the facial expressions. Even like simple scenes become just more terrifying because of how creatively shot they really are. And sometimes it's not even really that they're scary, it's just very deeply uncomfortable, like secondhand embarrassment levels of uncomfortable. And that's like somehow makes, I feel like, a lot of these scenes even worse and just more impactful. And then once you kind of hit the like final act of this film, this movie completely loses its mind in like the best way possible. The last like 30 minutes are absolutely insane. There's like this specific death scene shot from one of the characters, and it's shot in what feels like one continuous take, and it's generally just one of the craziest kills I've seen in a horror movie like in a long time. It's very brutal, it's shocking, and it's just filmed so well. And from that point on, the movie just keeps like escalating, and I love that I genuinely had kind of no idea how this movie was really going to wrap up. It constantly kind of throws some red herrings at you. You think it's going in one direction, and then it kind of completely kind of flips things on its head. And when the ending finally does happen, I thought it was just perfect, and it was a great way to kind of, I feel like the only way to kind of wrap up this story. This is something horror movies often struggle with too, making you care about like the characters in the film. A lot of horror movies have characters you don't really vibe with or understand, so when they do die, you're just kind of like okay, I mean, I guess I'm just kind of here for the kills, right? But here I actually cared like a little bit more. This friend group just feels more believable, natural, and when bad things started to happen to them, I generally did feel bad for most of them. It just made the horror, I feel like, hit way harder when compared to a lot of other horror movies nowadays. Another thing that I really loved about this film and the horror concept is they don't overly like explain the supernatural element to it, and thank God for that, because I feel like a lot of horror movies ruin great concepts by explaining every single detail to it. where did it come from, like why does this exist, what are all the rules to it, and suddenly it just becomes like less scary and less interesting. And this movie gives you like enough information to understand what's happening while still like keeping the mystery around it, you know, still intact. And I just love the kind of like that balance. It honestly leaves room for, I feel like, a potential sequel, but it still works perfectly as its own standalone film. And I think the biggest thing about this is the performances are amazing, especially the actress who plays Nikki in this film. She was absolutely incredible. I haven't really seen her in much stuff before, but this does feel like one of those performances that people are really going to remember, and when they see her in other stuff, they're going to think instantly back to this. The way she just talks, her facial expressions, and her smile she does throughout the movie is just, the way she just like moves in general, everything about her performance just feels unsettling, and she never really has to become some type of giant monster or anything ridiculous. She makes this character terrifying just through her performance alone, and I think those are always the best ones, and that is always the hardest thing to do. Also, I would definitely recommend going to see this film with friends. I went with two of my friends, and we had an amazing, you know, theater experience with this movie. One of my friends was literally just like hitting me during the scenes because he was just freaking out, and afterward he looked at me and even said, yeah, I don't think I can ever be in a relationship after watching something like this. And honestly, that's fair enough, but that's kind of how you know the film definitely struck a chord. I absolutely love this movie, the original concept of it, the great performances all around, the creative scares and camera work, insane final act, and just a great ending to wrap it all up. And I genuinely can't think of many negatives for this, so I'm really going to give it a 10 out of 10 for me, and I really think this is going to end up being one of my favorite horror movies in a long time. Let me know what you guys thought though, and where does this rank among kind of your favorite horror movies this year?